Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone, and Stuart here, and Larry with our update, and a lot of things going on. Hi, Larry. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, Stuart. Thanks for having me. It's really been moving.
Yeah. Where do you want to start with this thing? I've got a headline here. Maybe we can roll with this one. Congress moving to cut U.S. funding to the United Nations in wake of anti-Israel vote. That's just one headline of many. Kerry rebukes Israel, calling settlements a threat to peace. This thing keeps going. Bennett, education minister of Israel, to Kerry, pick up your Bible and read it. So, where do we start? Why don't we start with, Obama, of course, started this whole thing. Now he's denying, as I understand it, that he actually did it, but we know no UN ambassador or no United States ambassador to the UN would do such a thing without direct permission from Obama. Is that correct?
Oh, you know that it is. And as a matter of fact, Stuart, after almost 8 solid years of listening to Obama's rhetoric and then seeing what the truth is later and all the denials, years and years and years, it doesn't impress me when he denies anything.
Well, I know. He is a liar from the very beginning. And what do you think he's trying to accomplish, though, by saying he didn't have anything to do with it? I mean, anybody with any rational thought would have to conclude, oh, it's just another lie, so why would he bother with it? Or is he just a perpetual liar and can't help it? Pathological liar.
Well, I think that some are. It's like trying to get the truth out of Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton or even Barack Obama. It seems to really fit into the part they're playing in these end times. And, I like the word really that you've called him a number of times, and it seems to really fit like a glove. Lucifer.
Well, it's going to be very, very interesting with Trump and how far Trump actually gets. I've thought about it, and even, let's run a scenario that Trump actually gets in. And he's told Israel, just hold fast, wait until I become president, things are going to change. But in reality, when he is fighting entrenched bureaucrats in just about every agency in there, how's he going to do this?
Well, what's
That's
interesting,
what
Stuart, what's interesting is, and we'll insert this in right here. There was information came out today in the last couple of days that Obama is about to take on Russia over the hacking or the cyber attack claims, and of course blaming Russia for the WikiLeaks and et cetera. But what's interesting is some of the establishment, McCain and the other one that comes out with him, and the establishment and Obama apparently are about to go after Russia. At the very same time, Russia, and we can get into this if you want to. I don't know how deep you want to go with the rabbit hole here, but Russia apparently has just rejected the Obama-Kerry Middle East peace movement and the resolution, and warned them to stay out of the Middle East. And so this is really becoming very entangled.
Do you know what the actual position of Putin is in regards to Israel? I mean, he came out in favor of Israel, did he not? Just a little bit ago.
Well, the interesting part is, Netanyahu and Putin and Trump, as I call three wild cards in the deck, they've been meeting for the last year off and on. Those guys have had secret meetings, and Trump even received the Mossad chief and his entourage in New York City, not long back, and that's never happened before for the Prime Minister of Israel to send the Mossad chief to give you intel briefings. Matter of fact, he's getting more intel briefing information from Israel than he is from the CIA. But let me read this. This is Koenig, International News. It came out a while ago. And, of course, this came out about the time that, they're talking about punishing Russia. And, and this was after Kerry's speech. And so there seems to be a real Obama administration attack right now on Israel, and they're unrelenting. They're not stopping. They're pushing the limit of this. And there are a number of people that has issued concerns in the background that they're expecting Obama to try to actually make through the UN or construct a Palestinian state before he leaves office and try to divide Jerusalem, divide Israel, and actually remove Israel from the Golan. That's the orders of the UN resolution. And so here's a report, and this is the headline. It says, Russia reportedly rejects Obama-Kerry Mideast peace push at the UN. Lavrov, which of course we know is right under Putin, urges only direct talk between Israel and the Palestinians and warns outgoing Obama administration against U.S. domestic agenda entering into the Middle East. So there you've got that's really a threat from Putin. So this thing is getting hot.
Boy. Well, here's a headline, breaking report. John Kerry is working on another UN resolution that would officially recognize a Palestinian state. I think that's what you were just talking about.
There you
but
go.
anyway,
I haven't.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Stuart, I hadn't heard that one or seen that one yet, but that does fit what the fears that Israel and Trump and others had, that they were going to push this forward with only 20-something days left.
Well, with the vote that they took at the UN, I want to make sure I got this right. Under the international law, I guess, whoever you want to, give credit or credence, I guess would be a better word, for the United Nations, they have effectively already divided Jerusalem and Israel under that resolution, did they not? And now they're going after this state. I'll read you part of this. Multiple media outlets are reporting that U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is finalizing a document that the Obama administration hopes will form the basis for the UN Security Council resolution that officially recognizes a Palestinian state before the end of Barack Obama's term, January 20th. This comes on the heels of the UN Security Council's adoption of Resolution 2334 on December 23rd. That resolution declared that all Israeli settlements in the West Bank are illegal. It stated that the Security Council only recognizes 1967 ceasefire lines as the borders between Israel and Palestine, and it officially gave East Jerusalem back to the Palestinians. But it stopped short of formally recognizing a Palestinian state. So this has been in the works because he's finalizing this.
Yeah,
right.
That's in the work. The only thing is Israel will not do that. Netanyahu has already declared that it is a no-go and it will not happen, and Israel will go to war. And I'm supposing they'll fight the world over Jerusalem. They're not going to give it back.
Well, of course, that goes in with Zechariah, though. Jerusalem become a cup of trembling for the entire world. Anybody that comes against Jerusalem will be dashed to pieces. So I would think that would probably include the United States as well, seeing as there are no exceptions to that in the scriptures. So do you really think that they're going to do this? I mean, there was a lot of outrage over the first resolution. Does this guy have the brass to do this?
I don't know, Stuart. I'll bring up something that's really interesting or intriguing. Barry Rothman, on December the 25th, actually ran a Torah code, and he ran it basically from the question, will Netanyahu pull Israel out of the UN? Will Donald Trump do likewise? And he ran a Torah code, and it actually came out with two matrices. And let me read you the wording on the first matrix, and then I'll let you comment, and then I'll read the wording on the second matrix. The first matrix says, number 1, exit the UN. Number 2, USA. Number 3, Netanyahu. Number 4, Trump. Number 5, settlement.
Oh. So, and how does he interpret that? Does he say, is this a USA departing from the UN, or Israel just walking away from it?
Well, let me read you the second one, and then I'll comment. The second one is a little bit longer that he ran, and the matrix says, number 1, UNESCO. Number 2, enemy. Number 3, Jerusalem. Number 4, the temple. Number 5, Barak to Balaam. Number 6, come please, I will take you. 7, to another place. 8, perhaps it will be pleasing. 9, in the eyes of the Lord. 10, and he will curse them. And 11, children of Israel. And so I would have to say, from what I read about Barry's investigation through the Torah codes about this, he's not sure, but the wording seems to indicate the UN is an enemy of Jerusalem and the temple.
Yes.
And actually it says exit the UN, but it has both Netanyahu and Trump connected and USA. So Barry's wondering and just issuing a question, does that mean, in other words, does the wording of the Torah code that he brought out mean that Israel will leave the United Nations, which they are considering that. That's under talks right now in the Knesset. And then number 2, he's wondering if Trump, the day he goes into office, will immediately go to war with Obama and the UN and possibly exit the UN also, or just completely shut off all funds to the UN. So I don't know, but it's not going to be dull.
That's a good way of wording it. It's heating up. And I made a comment about Trump, and how's he going to do all this when he's got so many enemies? Well, the only way that I can see, and this is what bothers me about all this, the only way Trump can actually accomplish what he says he wants to accomplish, he has to declare martial law. Because otherwise he's got to fight Congress. He's got to fight the UN. He's got to fight the communists, the Marxists. But if he declares martial law, then he can do anything he wants by their own rules and by their own laws that they have put in place to pounce all over the Christians and the Jews and ne'er-do-well people that believe in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Those were the targets. This is what reminded me of Esther, with Mordecai and whatever his name was, the bad guy. What was his name? I can't remember.
Haman.
Yeah, Haman. I mean, it's almost in a way the same thing. You don't suppose that the FEMA camps that were sitting there waiting for you and I are going to be for them? I mean, they have declared out and out war, as far as I can see, against Trump. They're pulling out every stop there is.
Well, you're exactly right on that. It's interesting that on Fox News, Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters summed up the Obama's Middle East policy, and he gave this sentence. He said that Obama's Middle East policy appears to be praise Islam, ignore Christians, and blame the Jews.
Love it. That's about it. I mean,
it's really serious what you reported there. Obama, and he's decided he's not leaving, and he's going to stay in Washington and fight Trump as Trump goes into office. And so Trump's not really going in the smooth transition. Matter of fact, he's already admitted that Obama's thrown up roadblocks right and left. And we know that speaking of the left, that they are actually moving in a spirit of lawlessness right now already across the whole nation, projecting towards the January inauguration, which should be chaos. And so, it might be a perfect thing for Trump to come in and declare martial law and operate from there. And I don't know that he ever will go to the White House.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I mean, either way it went. Either the communist cartels, Clinton, Obama, et al., do a big false flag, economic collapse, or whatever, declare martial law and take the country for themselves, or Donald gets in, and because of the chaos and getting to the chaos, what's this deal? I'm going down another rabbit hole here. Of all these riots at these malls all over the country, what's going on? That sounds to me like that's totally orchestrated.
It reminds you, Stuart, a lot of the Wall Street protesters. Remember all those protests and all of this. You got to remember. They're organized and they are formulated and they are funded by the rich men, especially George Soros being one of the main ones. And it appears that the Wall Street protesters, the same ones that have been all over the country protesting for a year or 2 years. I mean, it seemed like protests is all we've had through the end of Obama's administration. But, and then we had the Black Lives Matter, which the same protesters were locked in step with the Black Lives Matter people, and all of that seemed to folded into the anti-cop protest and the marches and the burnings and the riotings, and now we've gone to the malls, and it seemed, well, we do know that since Obama's been in office, and he's the lawless one, there's no doubt about that. You could just look at the way he operates and see that there's been a spirit of lawlessness loose in the land, and I think we're seeing it going now to the extreme.
So, like I think I mentioned to you once before, you being a police officer for years, you probably dreaded domestics. I know most police officers don't like to get involved in domestics because you can't reason with people. Reason has gone out the door. Emotionalism is the only thing that matters, and it beginning to look more and more like the United States is involved in a husband and wife domestic with Trump supporters, we could call them the husband, and Hillary supporters the wife, and there's no rationale or reason between them.
Well, there's not, Stuart, and what's so interesting is they're all operating on a level of emotion. And when people operate on that level of emotion, I've told you before, there is no reasoning. There's no room for reason. It doesn't happen. And that's what we're seeing now in America. But we're also seeing it happen under a lawless president, and they know he's lawless and that he will not allow enforcement right now. Matter of fact, in all these malls, very few is even being arrested. Back in the day when we were really protected and served, back in the day, we would have arrested all these kids. Whether they're young adults or whatever age they were, they'd all went to jail. But see, you're not seeing that. Matter of fact, in some of these mass riots in these store malls, you're seeing them arrest 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, just a very few that fight the police. And that's it. And as long as we have lawlessness at the top, you remember what I said, if it's broke at the top, you can't fix it, well, there you go.
So I guess all we can do then is sit and wait and see who wins. Whether Obama creates some sort of a false flag and takes over and opens the FEMA camps, and then go the Christians, the Jews, and anybody else that he so desires, or whether Trump actually wins and maybe opens the FEMA camps for the for the powers that be that are in power right now. It seems to me that they have no choice but to fight with everything they've got, or they may very well end up in prison. I remember Trump, if it wasn't just for show, looked at Hillary on one of those debates and said, I'm going to put you in prison.
Well, Stuart, like I've said before, you asked me on one show we did, why is all that incredible amount of military, why so many generals around Donald Trump? I think we're beginning to really figure that out. I think we can understand why. It's survival. And the other part of the survival for Donald Trump really is going to be the Lord, and how much the Lord literally backs him up to put him in there and to be a Cyrus. I mean, we read about Cyrus the Persian king, and he didn't do it he didn't work at McDonald's. He didn't do it McDonald's way, and he didn't do it your way. He did it his way, and then the Lord used it to work it out. But it's very interesting. Matter of fact, Stuart, and when you want to talk about it, I found something very interesting about a red cap.
Yeah, let's get into that right now. That is fascinating. Now, this came from Tom Horn's book, right, that you're getting this from?
Yeah, this is a 2015 issue of a book called On the Path of the Immortals from Thomas Horn and Chris Putnam. And it's incredibly interesting. I bought it because of its information about portals and vortices and energy whirlpools and things like that, ancient and updated. But what was very interesting that I found, they found a Hopi elder that was willing to talk to them and share the oral traditional legends. And involved in this is a very incredible legend. And let me read this here. It talks about. It's talking about the World War, that comes, and it's what's interesting there. The Hopi elder said the World War III will be started by those peoples who first received the light. And anybody could, I suppose, guess on who that would be. But what's interesting here, let me read this, because this is really interesting. It said the Hopi await a Messiah-like figure, and the name of him will be, they'll call him the true white brother, and said, who in their language is Pahana. And the Hopi prophecy of the figure says this: it is known that our true white brother, when he comes, will be all-powerful, and he will wear a red cap. Now, Stuart, as I read on, it seemed like when this book was written, the Hopi the only one they knew about it all, they kind of assumed that maybe the one wearing the red cap that would come in and really exert power in this time frame was the Pope, maybe, because, the popes and some of them wear red hats and capes and things.
Yes.
And, as I was reading that, I thought to myself, now, wait a minute. Even the Pope hadn't been all-powerful, hadn't been able to just push through, against all resistance, because the Pope, even Malachi Martin indicated that they had battles too, the Pope and them battles, just like the West and the East. And so, but then it hit me. I cannot tell you how many campaign stops and all of these things that Donald Trump has done, and almost every single time I've seen him, he's wearing a red cap. And would you call the Pope a true white brother, or would you call Donald Trump a true white brother?
True white brother would have to go to Trump if he's for real, and it appears more and more that he really is for real, even though he has got many ties to the Masons and seems to be surrounding himself with globalists. But I think basically down deep from everybody that knows him and works for him, says he's really got a good heart. He's a decent person.
Well, what's interesting
so yes,
too,
you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say what's interesting too is the Hopi legend also warns their people when he comes not to take up arms. In other words, don't fight against him or struggle against him. And one of the interesting things, too, it appears, is that when he comes, this true white brother wearing the red cap, he'll come about World War III and the total destruction of America, the United States. And I found that fascinating because it would be hard to insert a pope into that slot of the true white man with the red cap when we've had a pope after pope after pope after pope, and the United States is still here, and we hadn't had World War III.
But I can understand where Trump could trigger World War III. You know, I mean, let's word it this way: the Illuminati operate. You know, when you say, well, it's the Soviet Union that attacks, or the former Soviet Union and all the allies of Russia right now attacks America and destroys her with nuclear war. But in reality, it's the Illuminati. It's the rich men of the earth that give the orders. So people should understand that when all of this begins to transpire, it's not like Russia attacking the United States. It's the Illuminati attacking the United States using Russia to do it, or whatever other allies they got, like North Korea, et cetera, et cetera. Because I remember when I was flying for the General Electric Company many, many years ago, and you probably remember this because you were with SAC there for a while, and were you under General LeMay at the time?
Well, I was in a SAC base under another commander, but they are all under some of those, and LeMay, I guess too. Yeah, I remember what you're saying.
So LeMay was the one who really whipped SAC up into how do I say, almost instantaneous off the ground with their B-52s, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the children were being told to go under the desk and hide from the nuclear bombs that were coming, et cetera, et cetera. And they ran all those drills. So here we are. I'm flying for the General Electric Company, and the big bosses were telling the pilots and the flight crews, there's not going to be a war. Don't worry about it. I didn't know at that time that J.R. Church, I think, he's long gone now, but probably one of the best, I guess, researchers we've had in the prophetic word, and he came across what he called the law of the merchants, which I had never heard of. But it's a law that's way above all the national laws, et cetera, et cetera. And what we were being told was something that they already knew. It wasn't going to be a war. It was all just stage play. And I finally figured out that what this stage play was really all about was research, R&D for technology. That by a huge war machine going on and threats of war, you could get the general population to fund all this research for war technology. So, it's kind of funny in a way, but it's not. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's very, very true. And they've actually, I believe, a lot of that over the years is what they call the Cold War, with Russia. I think a lot of black project finances, went out during that and funding, a lot of the activities related to the new craft that we see in the heavens now.
Yeah, I want to get back before we run out of time here to this Barry Rossman, the second one. Can you read those words over again?
Sure.
Do you still have
number
it in
one,
front of you?
Yeah. Number one, UNESCO, and of course, that's the UN Security Council thing. Number two is enemy. Number three, Jerusalem. Number four, the temple. Number five, Barak to Balaam. Number six, come please, I will take you. Number seven, to another place. 8, perhaps it will be pleasing. 9, in the eyes of God. 10, and he will curse them. 11, children of Israel.
I want to focus in on temple because of the Sanhedrin and the third temple. This is something the rich men of the earth would at least pretend to fight. But even beyond that, because that's a kind of a time marker, because the temple would be part of Daniel's 70th week, would it not? The last final week of years? Would that be your take on that?
I think that they would have to actually build it sometime, somewhere. And, we seem to, and I find it fascinating that, the news sources, especially out of Israel, reporting that the Sanhedrin has already approached Putin and Trump about building that temple. And so, and another thing, Stuart, and I've shared this with you, and I can't really say where I got it, but there is information that there's already been work in preparing for that to be done. I mean, over in Israel already, there's things happening, and of course, I got an email not long back said that people had visited the site where the new U.S. embassy is going to be built in Jerusalem, and so it's almost like you said. The rich men already said there wasn't going to be a war at that time with Russia and the U.S. and Cuba. They already know that a U.S. embassy is going to be built there at some time, and also a temple?
Yes, I think so. I think this is the whole goal. And then they can introduce their fake Messiah, whether he arrives in a UFO, and regardless of who it is, we're heading in that direction. And the other thing that I wanted to focus in on is I will come to a place, I guess it was, I will take you.
Yeah,
in another place.
Says, let me read that, because all of these are a number of different sentences, but they all seem to fit together. Come, please, I will take you to another place. Perhaps it will be pleasing in the eyes of God, and he will curse them, children of Israel. Of course, when you read these, you really you don't know how to fit them all together, because, a lot of these they'll actually be covering the other one. I mean, in the code itself, or the matrix, but you don't know you don't know what that really means, what that wording means. We have to guess on, unless we reach the point of after the fact. Now, after the fact, Torah codes seem to be easily read to some degree.
Yes. What I'm curious about is, I will take you to a place that is more pleasing. When they flee, according to the Lord. But the other concept might be the removal of the church. That might be a veiled reference to both. That he's going to come get the church, and he's also going to, remember, they flee to Petra, I think it is.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. There's so many, there's a lot of things we still don't have answers to. We have, it's kind of like connecting the dots when you don't have all the dots.
Yeah, I know. You can paint a picture that's wrong. Okay, getting back to Israel and this division. We have been told by more than one Christian who has had visions, including even little children, that if Obama causes a division of Israel, or Bush or whoever was in office, caused an actual division and divided Jerusalem and Israel, that he was going to divide the United States Now, we all know that from previous history that when the United States has done something rather nasty regarding Israel, whether people like Israel or not is totally immaterial. The facts are there that the Lord usually responds with a natural disaster, and usually a fairly nasty one. You remember David Wilkerson's vision where he said a major earthquake was going to strike the United States, and it would be one of the worst earthquakes in modern history. It would be so bad that it would be covered by world TV for days and days and days. And he said he thought it was going to come in a place not known for earthquakes. So we are watching earthquakes occurring all over the place now. How about you guys down there? Are you still fooling around with those M80s? And it seems like you got earthquake after earthquake after earthquake down there.
Well, we're still having earthquake swarms. All ours seem to be centered right now in central and northwestern Oklahoma, but ours have settled down the last few days. But today, or yesterday and today, there's been a considerable outbreak of earthquakes, almost sixes, in Hawthorne, Nevada. This is on the California border. And the Deos are also warning about the earthquake swarms out at Mammoth Lakes, California, and also something called one of the valleys there in Southern California. They're having like fours. There seems to be trouble brewing and a connection, but really Hawthorne, Nevada seems to be the epicenter. There's a lot of 5s, 5.8s, 5.5s that are going on, and this is 24 going into 48 hours of quaking. It's really not on the news particularly, but it's ongoing, and this has happened. This began really right after the Israel thing began with the UN and Obama, and it may be a warning, and we may see that the warning is not heeded, and then we may be in real trouble on the West Coast because you remember I told you Augusto Perez just had a visionary experience where he saw the West Coast devastated.
Well, there was a fellow, boy, I can't remember the details of it. Maybe you do. I think he was a kid, basically, when he had the vision of California, and a huge earthquake struck. But he talked about automobiles that weren't in existence at that time, but are now, and how he followed some individuals and how they all went underwater, and that basically California just kind of broke apart and disappeared into the deep. And now I know the Hopis claim that water is coming in all the way to their mesas out there. In fact, they may even have to use boats to go from mountaintop, I guess you could say, to mountaintop, where they survived. Have you heard any more about this? What did he say? What did Augusto say he saw?
Well, he said he saw the earthquakes begin to strike the West Coast suddenly, and that the pieces of the West Coast broke off and went into the sea, to the ocean. And he said it was absolutely catastrophic. He said it's all he could call it was a cataclysm, and he linked it in. Matter of fact, I think he titled it on his website, Cataclysm and End Times, and said that this is coming, and he saw it, and it was just beyond description how bad it was.
Wow. Well, we have a whole host of volcanoes going off, too, do we not? Everywhere about?
Oh, my. Yeah, considerably. And by the way, I believe they said there's one around Naples, Italy, that is a super volcano, and they say it is about to erupt, they're thinking. From the indications they've got, they're really beginning to warn on that one around Naples, Italy, Malimo, I believe is how you pronounce that, in Mexico just erupted, and they're expecting more eruptions there, expecting eruptions down in Central America, where they just had a 7.7 epicenter earthquake. And by the way, Dutch Sense, who follows a lot of the earthquake activity, is warning about some of the sites and locations in California with volcanic activity about to begin, he believes. And also there are reports of swarms now again, and you've read those, of Mount St. Helens, which Red Elk said, remember, was going to really blow.
Yes. Yeah, he was very certain that in fact, he was very specific about it. And he even said what the weather was going to be like. He said it was a very clear, beautiful day when it happened. But you probably saw that article about now they have found an iron, I don't know what you would call it. Is it an iron belt that they found? A liquid iron jet surrounds Earth core and is accelerating, according to this article from Forbes magazine.
Well, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that, Stuart. It's a liquid iron jet that is growing and surrounded the Earth's core, and it's beginning to accelerate, which reminds me of the movie The Core. You remember how
Yes.
There was a liquid moving under there too. And interestingly, Skywatch TV is their take on it is a little different, but Tom Horn says it reminds him of hell enlarging itself and speeding up for the judgment, Isaiah 5:14.
Well, of course, that's exactly what it would. The earth is expanding. If hell enlarges itself, I know Stan Dale has for a long time, and I agree with him 100%, the earth is going to expand just like it did in the days of Noah. And, of course, if hell is enlarging itself in order to accommodate all the souls that are soon going to be down there, that would mean the earth is expanding. So, you get science. What interests me is you get scientific verification of Scripture all over the place if you know what to look for. So, yeah, this is, if the earth is expanding, we should see, like Noah says, and I wanted to mention that, Noah claims that ne'er-do-well, erstwhile blind lady of Phoenix Rising claimed that volcanoes were going to form in places not known for volcano activity at all.
Yeah.
So maybe the Lord's payback is going to be a whole bunch of natural disasters, which would really cripple us if it was the New Madrid or Rift. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Payback?
And before we're seeing a lot of troubles with weather systems and the sky itself, as far as night and day and the sun and the moon. I wonder if the movement of weights within the core and the middle of the earth is throwing off our spin and maybe our balance or a wobble a little bit.
They certainly wouldn't be telling us, because the Inuit told NASA that the sky had changed, and they just mocked the Inuit and said, well, it's just an aberration of the atmosphere. And then there was something in Norway where the sun rose a couple days before it should have, and they were told that the land had settled, and that's why it happened that way. Anyway, how do they reach you, Larry? We're almost out of time.
Yeah, the quickest way is my blog, LarryWTaylor.org. That's LarryWTaylor.org.
Well, thanks for coming on, and folks, we are getting close to something, so it's just going to be kind of hang on to your hats, and we're going to have to just ride the storm out until the Lord comes for his people. And again, thanks, Larry, and folks, you want to go visit Larry's site. He keeps a lot of update. Anyway, good night, everybody, and thanks for listening.